The thoughts, opinions, and general overall shade thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck and Rico Lamitte, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us. Yeah, good morning, everybody, and it is Wednesday, Hump Day, July 24th, and today is National Thermal Engineer Day because everyone needs a thermal engineer. It's also National Drive-Thru Day for all you, munchie chasers. National Cousins Day, Rico.
Cousins make dozens.
Cousins, yeah. National Amelia Earhart. Yeah, Earhart Day. Yes.
They actually found her plane, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. That they did. And you guys, Rico, this is what makes today so great. It is National Tequila Day.
Oh, let's go.
Yes.
I can get behind that.
Yes, that's what I think everyone can get behind that. I
What's the policy? Should we, I know it's a little early, especially on the West Coast, but should we do a little tequila shot? I got some ready to go. This is Texas. We got some in the freezer all the time.
I mean,
I think it's sad. I think that's sad because it didn't fall yesterday, which would have been Taco Tuesday.
I agree with you. I agree with you, Rico. It should have been yesterday.
I'm gonna provide a counter viewpoint on that. Instead, we get 2 days to celebrate. You get Taco Tuesday, which was Tequila Day.
So it's the double back.
And then we get Tequila Day. So we get to celebrate twice as much.
You could still have a taco today, too.
You still could have a taco
You sure
today.
can.
Mm-hmm. On Hump Day, have a taco.
I blame Joe Biden.
And some añejo.
Anyways, thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look up above or down below on your screen to see exactly where we live on the internet. And we are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and on our very own website at www.highat9news.com. Well, Rico, are you with us right now?
I am.
Are we going to go into your story first?
We can do my story. You have to dip out for a quick meeting at 9:15, but I'll be back at halftime, so I can light the fire and walk away.
Okay, all right.
Light the match and walk away here.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I do have one correction that I need to make for everybody from the story that we covered yesterday regarding Glass House and Catalyst. So it's a very small correction, but it's a very, very important correction. Want to make sure that everybody gets this correct information. So in the settlement, it is true that Catalyst does have to pay Glass House costs. However, those costs are limited to things such as like the deposition and court filing fees and transcript fees. It does not involve the attorney's fees. And so they're estimating that to be about $30,000. And it says that they will owe Catalyst costs for the defamation they dismissed, and that should be about $15,000 in costs. And Elliot said, yeah, exactly. And Elliot says no attorney's fees provisions or on either cause of action. So not as bad as we thought it was yesterday for Catalyst in regards to their financial liability in regards with the settlement and whatnot. But I want to make sure that everybody knows that. But nonetheless, we're going to roll right into the dope dad himself, Mr. Rico Lamitte.
Yes. I'm reporting with my red hat, Jason.
Yeah,
not orange.
It's orange hat to me.
It is the proper red hat. It does not have a bunch of bullshit verbiage.
Aren't you glad you're here today?
It has the greatest, the GOAT, the real GOAT. All you 80s and 90s babies, not that LeBron James bullshit.
Yeah.
Anyways, as I begin my lighting of the match before I walk away here, cannabis stockholders may have noticed a nice little pop in their portfolio values at the close of this week's first two trading days. Analysts are tracking the rise of to the U.S. government's window closing Monday evening for public feedback on proposed scheduling changes and the rise of the recently rhetorical pro-cannabis candidate Kamala Harris, officially replacing Joe Biden for Democrats on the 2024 presidential ticket. The public feedback period for Schedule 3 classification ended Monday night at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time, with nearly 43,000 comments tallied. Should reclassification move forward, cannabis would shift into the same regulatory bucket as ketamine and anabolic steroids, drugs defined under federal law as drugs with a moderate to low potential for physical and psychological dependence. Schedule 1, on the other hand, status quo since 1970 has keeps cannabis next to heroin, LSD, and other substances of abuse, listed as having no medical purposes. MarketWatch's Steve Gelsey reported that the move could save legal operators millions in taxes because they'll no longer be required to follow Section 280E prohibitions from making standard business tax deductions. A DEA spokesperson declined to provide a timeline for the final ruling or how the roughly 43,000 comments ranks in terms of feedback on any drug scheduling issues in the past. Among the comments, Gelsey highlighted a study by Whitney Economics for the Minority Cannabis Business Association that concluded 33.7% of white cannabis business operators reported being profitable, while only 17.5% operators of color managed to do so. The group argued that ending the 280E tax penalty through rescheduling is a desperately needed change and will disproportionately benefit social equity operators of color. On the other hand, he noted smart approaches to marijuana has vowed to challenge this rescheduling effort in court, saying that marijuana is a, quote, psychoactive drug known to come with serious health and mental health consequences, end quote. Monday also marked the first stock trading day after Vice President Kamala Harris emerged as the likely Big D Democratic nominee for president instead of Joe Biden. Gelsey said that Harris's support of President Joe Biden's move to reclassify cannabis and her highly publicized meeting with cannabis industry members at the White House earlier this year were major factors. The fact that Harris is now headlining has given a boost of confidence to stockholders, as polls have showed. The Democrats' takeover, followed by a record-breaking 24 hours of fundraising, has given pro-cannabis voters reason to believe positive change may actually occur with the current VP in charge. A significant change in response to Biden's past waffling on the issue and Trump's unpredictability, with vocal support ranging from complete indifference and wanting to charge illegal drug dealers with the death penalty. While I'm personally more inclined to follow the money and refrain from any concrete emotional reaction when it comes to promises made in an election season by any politician running for office, I will say this. I was pleasantly surprised to read in a separate article by Marijuana Moments' Ben Adlin on the same issue that while approximately 35% of the near 43,000 comments submitted by Monday's deadline agreed with Biden's administration plan for marijuana to be rescheduled, most of the comments, a whopping 57%, said that cannabis should be entirely descheduled. A mere 8% said that the substance should remain in Schedule 1. The people have spoken. I don't have much confidence in American leaders listening, but either way, we will soon see. I'm Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street for I9 News. Let's talk about it.
They had so many comments, and I know a lot of them were good, a lot of them were bad. A lot of people were calling for descheduling. A lot of people were saying how it's totally against the government's purview to be able to do this because of the procedural things that they are doing. You know, the AGs wrote a big letter saying that this is not the way to go. And man, I just how many people do you think are going to read all of these comments? Rico.
AI is going to read them.
That's what I was thinking.
AI is going to do a really nice job of tallying yes or no based on the responses.
Yeah. I don't think anybody's.
Is that going to be the same AI that they used for the Kamala call with Joe?
I mean, let's keep it a buck here, man. People are energized.
Just asking.
Behind Kamala Harris. Joe Biden's low energy.
No one is energized behind
and is
Kamala.
not even knowing. Yeah, I mean,
that's factually incorrect, Jason. Whether you like her or not, that's true.
Yeah,
no one is energized by her.
Made no sense.
No, I'm going to agree with Rico on this one. I think that we knew that Biden had no chance at defeating Trump, right? So now that she has entered the ring, there is at least a little bit more interest around the election. There's more conversation. I don't like her either. Hold on, Jason. I see you opening your mouth. Let me just finish because I'm unhinged too. I'm here with Dale today. I'm doing my best, but I'm trying. Mental health. But yeah, no, I think that there's a lot more discussion around. It's re-energized this whole conversation because now the Democratic Party feels that they do have a candidate that's at least going to finish the race.
Right.
Whether she wins
the conversation
or not.
has shifted from the candidate's mental acuity to actual policy positions. And if we're being honest, regardless of the vice president's track record when she was a prosecutor in San Francisco or Oakland or in the state of California, she has come a long way on at least her verbal position on cannabis and how she feels it should be treated.
Did you say her oral position on cannabis?
Oh boy.
Her verbal.
Her oral position on cannabis. Interesting choice of words there, Sohum.
Yeah, a verbal, but you can go with oral if you want.
I prefer oral position. Yeah.
That's
it's more of her style.
The GOP likes to think about a woman candidate
it's more of her style.
No, that's her track record.
That's her track record.
It's not. And I, as a woman who is obviously staunchly conservative, I don't want to attack her because she is a woman. I think that that's in poor taste, and I think that let's try not to do that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Jenny Beth. Can we get a round of applause for that? Like, for real, man. There's
plenty of things to criticize her about.
There's enough to take her down on her policies and the actions that she's actually taken in official.
Did you use the phrase "take her down"?
Dude,
just saying.
Keep it a buck, man.
Okay.
That's
all right, just saying.
That's bullshit. The same can be said about about Donald Trump and his misdeeds on the personal level, on a much higher level. But we don't want to take it there. Let's talk about her failed policies. There's
plenty to talk about there. I mean, she is the border czar. She is the border czar.
Let's keep it a buck. Let's keep it on that because Trump has far more we can talk about to take him down a peg on a personal level. So let's not do that.
It's like when you're arguing and you start calling people all kinds of bitches. You just lost the argument because you don't have a factual basis anymore.
And this is I think
basis to argue.
This is a good kind of example of why this was actually, for once, a strategically smart move by the Democratic Party. Because look at where Jason's going now, and this is very reflective of the conversation coming out of the GOP now. Is the attacks have shifted from policy to an age to now things that might be rooted in misogyny or other issues that are not related to her as a candidate or her policy positions or her track record as an elected official.
It's not rooted in misogyny. It's rooted in just factual information, Sohum.
Yeah, but to bring that up as a point of criticism,
it is a thing. It is a thing. People criticize Trump for things all the time.
I guess if we are talking about character, that is true. That does happen.
Yeah,
but I mean,
that is character.
I think that that's also the part of the issue that I have with people who hate Trump just because he's Trump. Tell me policies specifically that you have a problem with. Tell me something procedural that you have a problem with. Not that you have a problem with once he had sex with a woman and paid for it, and had paid for it twice technically. You know what I mean? Because he got.
Oh, I see what you did there. I see what you did there, Jenny. That was cute.
I would like to see both sides kind of stick to the argument because there's plenty to argue about without bringing in baseless bullshit.
I love how the public comments turn into this. Discussion about the public comments, and this turned into this, you guys.
I love it too, and I love how I can light the match and walk away. I'll be back at halftime.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. We'll see you at halftime. Rico's got to run, and so we're going to run to a commercial, and we're going to be right back.
Oh man, that was weird. Hey, you America. Do I look like Sean Connery?
Good morning, America. Saman Razani coming to you live from sunny Los Angeles, California with the one and only highest host, Mr. Jason Beck, smoking on the best weed in the world. Did you know that we have an audio-only version of our podcast? You can find it on Apple, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. No excuses in 2024. If you haven't checked us out, check it out now. And also, check out what the Prophet's doing in 2024.
All right, you guys, and we are back. I'm going to roll into my story, and I just, full disclaimer, it's a little bit of a long one, so I'm probably not going to finish all of it, so you can read the full story on our website at www.high9news.com. But one of our most popular videos is all about truckers, and so this story is all about trucking, you guys, because a federal safety board says marijuana rescheduling could imperil truck drivers' drug testing despite the Transportation Secretary's assurances. That's right. The National Transportation Board, the NTSB, is warning that marijuana rescheduling could create a blind spot with respect to drug testing and federally regulated workers in safety sensitive positions. No, not that, the box. Yes. From U.S. You got to stop. You got to stop it and rewind it. You got to stop it and rewind it. Stop and rewind it. All right, rewind it. Boom. All right, now turn this black box a little bit to the left.
Oh boy.
A little bit more. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. Sorry, you guys. The National Transportation Safety Board, the NTSB, is warning that marijuana rescheduling could create a blind spot with respect to drug testing of federally regulated workers in safety-sensitive positions, despite assurances last month from U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg that the cannabis rescheduling proposal would not alter the federal drug testing requirements. The NTSB said in a press release on Tuesday that the Biden administration's proposed move of cannabis to Schedule 3 of the Controlled Substances Act could imperil federally required drug testing for airline pilots, truck drivers, and many others in safety-sensitive positions. Can you imagine pilots just flying high? Moving marijuana to Schedule 3 without taking steps to ensure that marijuana testing remains within the scope of pre-employment, random reasonable suspicion, and post-accident drug testing would create a safety blind spot, the board said. Americans consider marijuana safer than alcohol and cigarettes. And in a quote, the NTSB is concerned that the proposed rule to move marijuana to Schedule 3 of the CSA would, upon becoming effective, immediately prohibit continued testing of safety-sensitive transportation employees for marijuana use. Under relevant regulations, the comment submitted to the federal docket said, because the HHS certified laboratories used for such testing are not authorized to test for Schedule 3 controlled substances, this would mean that airline pilots, airline maintenance workers, bus and truck drivers, locomotive engineers, subway train operators, ship captains, pipeline operators, personnel transporting hazardous materials, and other safety-sensitive transportation employees would be prevented from being tested for marijuana use, the NTSB claims. Many of those positions are regulated by the Department of Transportation, better known as the DOT, and the board is therefore urging the DEA to ensure that any final rule to rescheduling marijuana does not compromise marijuana testing under the DOT and HHS procedures applicable to safety-sensitive transportation of employees. In a hearing late last month with congressional lawmakers, however, Pete Buttigieg said that the DOT specifically lists marijuana as a substance to screen for. Even if rescheduling were to take place, he said, that wouldn't change the DOT's testing rules. In a quote, he says, our understanding of the rescheduling of marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 is that it would not alter DOT's marijuana testing requirements with respect to the regulated community, the secretary said at the time. In another quote, for private individuals who are performing safety-sensitive functions subject to drug testing, marijuana is identified by name, not by reference to one of those classes. So even if it moves in its classification, we do not believe that that would have a direct impact on that authority. That's interesting. DOT did not immediately respond to a request for comment from Marijuana Moment on Tuesday on how NTSB's concerns square with Buttigieg's testimony. And at the hearing, Buttigieg was responding to a question from Representative Rick Crawford from Arkansas during a hearing of the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. The congressman had referenced concerns from the American Trucking Association, the ATA, about the broad public health and safety consequences of reclassification on the national highway system and its users, which ATA voiced in a recent letter to Buttigieg. And the rescheduling and deregulation of marijuana would inevitably cause a number of people driving impaired while high to grow. That doesn't make sense, but whatever. Crawford said, can you speak to what your department is doing to ensure that transportation workers in safety relevant positions can continue to be tested for marijuana use if this proposal goes forward, and how your department plans to address transportation safety in light of DOJ rulemaking? Buttigieg replied that any impaired driving via alcohol, marijuana, or any other source of impairment is, of course, a major safety concern. While transportation continued that DOT continuing to evaluate any indirect impact of rescheduling, he said the agency doesn't expect any drug testing requirement relevant that to be changed based on the reclassification decision. It's not immediately clear which other federal employees would still be required to be tested for marijuana or if rescheduling goes through. While Buttigieg is correct that drivers are required to be tested for a panel of drugs, including marijuana, federal employees are subject to both blanket workforce policies and agency-specific ones. And as it stands, the use of a Schedule I and Schedule II drugs by federal government workers is prohibited under a 1986 executive order from then President Ronald Reagan that established the Federal Drug-Free Workplace Program. And while individual agencies have adopted their own policies regarding drug use, many are rooted in the Reagan order, because that order defines illegal drugs as only those in Schedule I and Schedule II, and some attorneys believe rescheduling to Schedule III could lift marijuana restrictions that currently apply to all federal workers. That's an interesting point right there. At a separate hearing on Tuesday, NTSB Chair Jennifer Homendy submitted written testimony highlighting the board's concerns about rescheduling. And in a quote, as you know, the NTSB has long been concerned about impairment in all modes of transportation, she said. This includes our concerns about marijuana use among crew members and other safety-sensitive personnel in rail. We believe there will be a serious negative impact on transportation safety if the DEA moves forward with rescheduling without addressing the issues further detailed in our comment. At last month's earlier hearing with Buttigieg, Representative Michael Bose, Republican from Illinois, also pressed the transportation secretary on the impact of marijuana rescheduling on drug testing for truckers, school bus drivers, subway operators, and other federally regulated transportation workers. And in a quote, our commitment to that testing continues regardless of the schedule, and we believe our authorities are intact too, because they don't call for testing by reference to where marijuana sits in its classification, but rather it's specific named. And Buttigieg responded and in quote says, so whether we're talking about the regulated community, those drivers you were talking about, or whether we're talking about our own personnel, someone with a security clearance or someone in a tower, or understanding is that at this time it is that nothing about that reclassification would change our practices. Chris Spear, ATA CEO, said afterward that he appreciated the exchange between Crawford and Buttigieg, and in a quote says, we are grateful to Congressman Crawford for elevating this serious issue, and we appreciate Secretary Buttigieg's focus on providing the transportation industry with the clarity it needs to continue screening for marijuana use among safety-sensitive transportation workers. Spear said in a quote, if the trucking industry's ability to conduct drug testing for marijuana use were to be restricted, a heightened risk of impaired drivers would threaten our nation's roadways. DOT and ATA share the goals of achieving zero highway fatalities and ensuring the commercial driving workforce is qualified to safely operate, which is why we are committed to partnering with DOT to mitigate harmful impacts caused by the potential reclassification of marijuana. The ATA letter to Buttigieg was part of an ongoing effort to raise the alarm about the proposal to move marijuana from Schedule I to Schedule III of the Controlled Substances Substances Act, and the group said in an earlier press release, this major policy shift could have significant negative consequences for highway safety, endangering all those who share the road. ATA said it intended to engage the Department of Justice and the Department of Health and Human Services and other federal partners to ensure that any change in the law regarding the status and legality of marijuana use is accompanied by an explicit allowance for the testing of marijuana use by the DOT, regulated safety-sensitive workers, end quote. But while the trucking industry is raising the alarm, truckers themselves apparently feel differently about the proposed policy shift. As part of an ongoing public comment period around rescheduling, some commercial drivers have weighed in to defend the rescheduling. Comments from truckers overwhelmingly favor the change, though at least some appeared to believe rescheduling would indeed allow them to use medical marijuana while away from work. And another trucker who was claimed to be a driving instructor pushed back on the notion that the regulatory change would signal to drivers that it's okay to consume before a shift. In a quote, he says, I would expect my drivers not to drink alcohol at work, take NyQuil before a shift, or a prescription that would interfere with driving, or get behind the wheel with a lack of sleep. The commentator wrote, and it says also, at the same would apply to those who take cannabis. More broadly, 9 in 10 who submitted comments on marijuana rescheduling supported moving the substance out of Schedule 1 of the Controlled Substances Act, according to a new analysis by the firm Headset. A separate analysis from the Drug Policy Alliance found that roughly 70% of comments support decriminalizing marijuana or removing cannabis from the CSA completely. Well, that is great news. And as for more states legalize marijuana, a federal report published earlier this year showed that the number of positive drug tests among commercial drivers fell in 2023 compared to the year before, dropping from 57,597 in 2022 to 54,464 in the last year. At the same time, however, the number of drivers who refused to be screened at all also increased by 39%. Another question found that 65.4% of motor carriers believed current marijuana testing procedures should be replaced with methods that measure active impairment, and at the time, the report from the American Transportation Research Institute noted a 65,000 driver deficit in the country and said the fear of positives over marijuana metabolites, which can remain in a person's blood for long after active impairment, may be keeping would-be drivers out of the industry. The record high number of refusals came as the transportation industry faces a nationwide shortage of drivers, which some trade groups have said has only been made worse by drug testing policies that risk flagging drivers even when they're not impaired on the job. Current federal law mandates that commercial drivers abstain from cannabis, subjecting them to various forms of drug screening from pre-employment and to randomized testing. And in June of last year, meanwhile, an American Transportation Research Institute survey of licensed U.S. truck drivers found that 72.4% supported loosening cannabis laws and testing policies. Another 66.5% said that marijuana should be federally legalized. And cannabis reform advocates, meanwhile, have also called on federal officials to change what they call discriminatory drug testing practices around the trucking industry. In a quote, tens of thousands of workers are leaving the commercial trucking industry because the federal government refuses to update its antiquated marijuana policies, Paul Armentado, deputy director of NORML, wrote in a Marijuana Moment op-ed earlier this year. And in another quote says, fewer truckers on the road results in supply chain shortages and higher prices for the goods Americans rely on. A top Wells Fargo analysis said that in 2022 that there's one main reason for rising costs and worker shortages in the transportation sector: federal marijuana criminalization and resulting drug testing mandates that persist even as more states enact legalization. Representative Earl Blumenauer, Democrat from Oregon, sent a letter to the head of the DOT back in 2022 emphasizing that the agency's policies on drug testing truckers and other commercial drivers for marijuana use are unnecessary, costing people their jobs and contributing to supply chain losses. Last year's ATRI report noted that research into the impact of cannabis use on driving and highway safety is currently mixed, complicating rulemaking to address the issue. And a separate 2019 report from the Congressional Research Service similarly found that evidence about the cannabis's ability to impair driving is inconclusive. Also, last year, the DOT finalized a rule permitting another alternative option to screening urine samples, saliva-based testing. Depending on frequency of use, THC is generally detectable in saliva anywhere from 1 to 24 hours after use, according to the agency. And in 2022, meanwhile, DOT proposed guidance warning commercial drivers who use CBD products as they are doing so at their own risk. A newsletter from DOT's Federal Transit Administration published that same year included 2 sections on cannabis issues, one that again reminded employees that they're barred from using marijuana, and another that similarly warned that CBD products remain unregulated and could contain THC levels that are detectable in a drug test. And meanwhile, the head of the ATA told Congress a year ago that the state-federal marijuana policy conflicting is creating a litigious environment for the trucking industry, contributing to the challenge of the labor shortage. In a quote, "Want to smoke weed at home? Smoke weed at home. If it's legal, fine," ATA President Speer said at the time. And another quote says, "Do not get behind the wheel of an 80,000-pound vehicle. We need to have strong standards, and we need to enforce the law." Well, this article brings up so many issues. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about that, and I'm sorry that article was so long. But nonetheless, what do y'all have to say about this?
I liked your little teleprompter dance at the beginning.
Like that?
That was good.
Cute.
That was good.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm glad sorry, go ahead, Jenny.
I just want to, my mommy's a truck driver, so shout out to truck drivers. But, you know, they're not allowed to have alcohol even in their truck. So, like, they can't have alcohol in their truck. I told you before, I got my mom some hemp-based hair products because she has hair like mine that's a little insane, and it's specially formulated for that. But it had, like, pictures of weed leaves on it, right? And she gave it to my sister. She was scared to, like, even have it in her truck. So, you know, I mean, the suggestion that they don't drink alcohol, it's not a suggestion. They're not even allowed to have it in the truck, even when they're off, even when they're shut down. And you have to understand, over-the-road truck drivers, these are their homes as well. So I wanted to just clear that up. I think, you know, safety first. We've seen a lot of truck drivers do some crazy shit. Some of them are better than others. And, you know, it brings me back thoughts of the guy that didn't stop in Colorado. And unfortunately, you know, was it Colorado, wherever that was, that killed all those people? And, you know, I think safety is important. I do think that people should be able to medicate themselves as they want when they're in their off time. And I don't think that most truck drivers are going to go, you know, throw 3.5 in a backwood and hit the road with their truck.
Oh, man, can you imagine that?
No, I mean, I agree with what you said, Jenny Beth. I think, first of all, the comparison to alcohol is the best thing that you can do, because, yes, that's a lawful activity, but just because you're allowed to drink does not mean that you're allowed to get behind an 18-wheeler and drive around after slamming a couple beers in the morning. Like, and nobody believes that that's the case. Nobody has ever suggested that because alcohol is legal that it's going to lead to an increase in truckers consuming alcohol. But the main thing is, I'm glad that the article brought up that point about the shortage of truck drivers. Because I remember reading the article about this. I don't remember if it was 2023 or late 2022, but it was a big issue where a lot of truck drivers were not renewing their credentials or continuing to drive specifically because of marijuana testing. And I think this actually points to a bigger issue when it comes to road safety and sobriety tests for cannabis. Is right now, the testing that's done, whether it's a blood or a urine test, is not actually indicative of intoxication at the time, right? Yes, you may have used it in the past, but there's no direct correlation to, if my blood has X nanograms of THC metabolites in it, then I must be intoxicated. And that's the real issue here that needs to be solved, not just for truckers, but for general law enforcement stopping regular motorists as well, is that they don't have any real way of measuring intoxication from cannabis at the time the way that we have a breathalyzer for alcohol. And that is the problem that really needs to be solved. And then I think this concern about whether it applies to truck drivers is not really an issue at that point.
That's true. I think
the problem is how this is metabolized in the body. People want to make the comparison to alcohol, which it absolutely can't be compared to. You can do a time analysis of how the liver detoxifies alcohol, and it's pretty steady. That's why they have the numbers they have. You can't do that with cannabis. And one of the issues that we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks is cops using cannabis off the job, or people with a gun using cannabis, okay? Now, we're looking at public safety. We don't have a clue of what to do to measure impairment. That's what they're after, is impairment. You know, my dad was a truck driver too. He was a teetotaler, so there never was a question of him going to drink or take other drugs. He didn't want to do it. But I started smoking weed from an early age, and there was just no way for him to understand. And basically, you're unimpaired after an hour or so for the average consumer. But that's not a game you want to play with the trucking industry. They are driving a dangerous vehicle. It's like flying a plane. Yeah, yep. I don't want you to have any of the stuff in your system, but we can help it. And to restrict people from industries because they might take a drink off the job or some other intoxicant, we like to call them. We don't have the way to bridge from where we are now to an actual test for impairment that a typical cop can do to figure out on the road if you're impaired. And then in court, we bring in dueling experts, and no jury wants to convict somebody when no one can tell you that having, 5 nanograms in your blood makes you automatically impaired, because you can't prove that. This is just a mess. And I think Buttigieg, when he said that we've got marijuana specifically stated in these statutes, is important, because the executive order from Reagan was that. It was an executive order. Mm-hmm. And whoever the president is, if this thing gets rescheduled, can issue an executive order to include marijuana in Schedule 3, or just not even mention Schedule 3, just make sure marijuana is included in these testing standards. This is an example for me of how inside the government they're going to drag their feet as long as they can, find every excuse they can to drag this out so that we don't get a decision made. And I don't trust them, basically. And the science is just not there. So I don't know what this argument's actually going to solve. I just don't see a solution to this right now.
I think from a safety standpoint, you can tell, like, if somebody's too high to drive, like, listen, I've been high, and I've been high as fuck. And, like, I would not drive a car after, like, judging Emerald Cup. I sat there for 2 hours just dabbing rosin. Probably shouldn't have driven a car. Didn't. Took a nap, ate a snack. Right? Like, if we're looking for testing standards and how to quantify just how intoxicated someone is, I think that's probably more about, being able to prosecute them than actually keep people safe. You know what I mean? Like, we have, like, field sobriety tests for a reason. I probably wouldn't have done so hot on something that's going to make me stand still and stand straight and stand alert and, whatever else litmus test you wanted to give me on that at my absolute highest.
I had a cop pull me over because he thought I was smoking while driving, and he pulled me out of the car and gave me a whole sobriety test and whatnot. And he ended the whole conversation with saying, "I don't believe that you didn't smoke, but I also don't believe that you're too high to drive."
Right.
But I never admitted that I smoked. Otherwise, he would have definitely gave me a DUI.
You know how Pigpen walked around on the peanuts with just a little cloud of dust? You do that with like a little aura of weed smoke smell. So I believe.
Was that CSP, Jason? Is that State Patrol?
Yeah, it was actually the California Highway Patrol. Yep, it was. That it was. I just think it creates an interesting issue, because I think the only solution that the NTSB has for this, or even the Department of Transportation, ultimately is going to be some actual field side type of sobriety test, because you have to get the impairment when the driving is actually happening. And whether you have to go and take a test before to get a license or whatnot, that only is testing you for that one period of time. And so I think ultimately they have to revamp this whole testing thing, and the only way I think that they're going to get to where they want to be is if there is some type of standardized test that will actually measure your impairment at the time of an incident.
Absolutely, and I think maybe one silver lining of this. Again, I agree with Dale's point that this conversation is really just dragging out the process. But maybe one silver lining is that you have other larger institutions and bureaucracies that now have an incentive in trying to figure out how to create that test for actual impairment versus.
You know what I really would like to see too? I would really like to see a study done on how much cannabis consumption lowers road rage in America.
True.
I think I would really like to see that, because I think that would be a very compelling study to combat a lot of these reefer madness narratives that the federal government comes up with.
That's absolutely
I would agree with that. And again, I'm not going to sit here and endorse that anybody gets behind the wheel after they smoke, but I personally do feel like I'm a more attentive driver when I'm a little bit stoned.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
Well, the insurance companies have a stake in this too. And I was hired by insurance companies to try a bunch of cases. And you can just imagine a truck has a crash and there's a question of whether the driver was impaired. How do you prove or disprove impairment? And one of the things you want to look at is, can we get any toxicology tests on the driver or anybody like that? And then what does it mean? And it's just a difficult problem, and there's a lot of money at stake when there's an injury here, and that's what we're all trying to prevent, is injuries. You should not get behind the wheel if you're too fucked up to perform the average functions of driving that vehicle.
Totally agree.
Don't
Exactly.
do it.
No matter.
And if you do, I think you should have your ass kicked if you go out and hurt people.
Yeah, no matter what the substance is, whether it's cannabis, alcohol, prescription drugs.
It doesn't have to be a substance. Whether you're too tired, if you're, you know you're bipolar and you know you're off the meds and like losing your shit that day, probably shouldn't be driving either. I mean, there are a lot of things that can make you a dangerous driver, and that's just a selfish decision to do it anyway.
100%.
Anecdotally, though, I think from my observations, unlike alcohol, which reduces people's inhibition and tends to make them overconfident in their ability, particularly to operate a motor vehicle, I think cannabis has the opposite effect. I think people are more likely to be a little bit more introspective and cautious if they're unsure if they're too stoned. I'm not saying that's a universal rule, but I do think it's quite a bit different from alcohol.
That's fair.
In that sense.
Fair enough. And on that, we're going to keep this thing rolling. We got to roll right on into Attorney Dale Schafer. He's the founder of Armada Law Practice, and at one point in time did some time for a cannabis crime. Here to show you how gravity can be reversed by pissing up a rope is none other than Attorney Mr. Dale Schafer. Yes.
Good morning, everybody, and on the East Coast, good afternoon. My story today comes out of Law 360, and it comes out of Nebraska, and it involves discussions we've had and pissing matches we've had over some of these analogs of THC, the Delta 8, the Delta 10, the double-aught, the acetate, all these other things. And Nebraska is a no cannabis state, no medical, no recreational, but they do allow hemp. And as we all know, the hemp bill just stated it's 0.3% THC or under to make it hemp. Okay? And we've had all these discussions about what do you do with these manufactured THC products. And what the state of Nebraska did was they sued I think there's 21 altogether. There's a lot of them that got sued for violating public protection and food safety laws. Okay? And the story seems to have gone like this, that if you're putting synthetic THC into any product, that's an adulterant, that violates our food safety laws and consumer protection laws. So the state of Nebraska sued a bunch of these companies. I think it's 21. Back and look at the number if it really is important, but what we're seeing here is if the front door is shut, you go in the side window. Okay? It was difficult to go after these companies straight up for THC that comes from a hemp plant if it's under 0.3%. But for all the other cannabinoids, and this is how they address this. When they settled these cases, they told these companies, all right, we're going to settle this. You're going to pay us to destroy all these products. And we're not going to charge, everyone pays their own attorney's fees. But if you come back and do this again, we're going to spank you. Happens the second time, we're going to double the spanking. And if it goes on beyond that, you're going to have to disgorge all your revenues from the time the complaint was filed against you. And the way that they did this is that they used the term prohibited hemp products. And this means a product that contains synthetic cannabinoids, which is capable of being consumed, okay? That means anything that can go into your body, get into your system at all, it's going to be covered by this. And if it contains synthetic cannabinoids, they are prohibited. That includes hemp flower that's adulterated with synthetic cannabinoids. Synthetic cannabinoids are defined as any cannabinoids produced, transformed, manufactured, or modified by means of chemical synthesis or other chemical manipulation, including delta 8, delta 9, delta 10, or that are created by isomerization, chemical term. And then THC means tetrahydrocannabinol, as well as any variants, equivalents, and analogs. Okay, this is the kitchen sink definition. Oh, if you have less than 0.3% of THC, it's a hemp product. But if it contains any of these other synthetic hemp products, these synthetic tetrahydrocannabinols, it is prohibited. Okay? Now, delta 8 does occur naturally in very small quantities, but the companies I've represented that are doing this, they're doing this in large scale. They buy these commercial synthesization pots, can be pressurized, temperature can be regulated, and then you can add chemicals to it under pressure and at certain temperatures to remove from one bonding site the THC part of the molecule and stick it on another. Okay, and CBD is, you can synthesize these tetrahydrocannabinols out of CBD. Okay, and this is going on. This is how the pharmaceutical world works. All the opioids work this way. They take like codeine and subject it to this stuff, and you come up with hydrocodone or oxycodone. The same thing with morphine, with hydromorphone, things like that. So this synthesis process is out there. It's commercially available, and what we've seen is that these products show up with less than 0.3% delta 9 THC, which grows in the hemp, and then they start throwing delta 8, delta 10 in there. These are intoxicating tetrahydrocannabinols. And so what they've done is they've been very inclusive in the language here. These are part of the settlements. But if you do any of this stuff that includes any of these synthetic tetrahydrocannabinols, it's a prohibited product, and you're going to get spanked pretty good. Now, this may give an example to other states out there looking to rein in some of these intoxicating THC molecules. And I hope that we can find a way to do this, because these synthetic THCs are, I just don't trust them. I don't think they're good to have out there in the marketplace. THC has a long history from the plant. You know its safety. These other synthetic molecules, we don't. So Nebraska, you know, I hate to toot the horn for them at all, because they have no cannabis laws, whether it's medical or recreational. But they seem to have found a way to rein in this gas station synthetic THC market that's out there. So I'm going to throw this back at you and see what you guys think about it.
Dale, they didn't do any mention of THCA in this. This is just the synthetic cannabinoids, correct?
They did not.
Just wanted to make sure, clarifying that.
They use the inclusive language of all analogs and things like that. So if you go talk to a chemist, a biochemist especially, they will give you enough inclusive language. And I'm hoping that this would cover the nonsensical argument that THCA is somehow not to be covered by this, because as soon as you heat it up, it turns into THC, which is, it's just a ridiculous argument. But hopefully they've got enough language in here to cover it.
I guess the question is, does analog cover a precursor, right? Because THCA is really more of a precursor. I'm not a chemist, so I have no idea about what the official definition of an analog is from a biochemical standpoint.
Well, you're right, and if that was going to be, if I was going to try that case, I'd bring in a biochemist, especially a pharmaceutical biochemist, to talk about all of these synthesis mechanisms and what this actually does, what the liver does. Because if you eat THCA, you consume it orally, you do not get the hydroxy-11 effect that you get from smoking THC. Okay, so you get completely different effects, and I don't know. It'd be an interesting question if I was to try the case, but I think that for for the purpose of preserving the industry that we want, that has plant-produced, not biosynthesized stuff. And I think this is a good move to try and rein this in.
Mm-hmm.
I partially agree with that, Dale. I think, no, I mean, Nebraska is notoriously a prohibitionist state, so I'm not going to say that I'm surprised by the way that they approach this, but look at the demand for those THC analogs and synthetics in states where they actually have a functioning adult use program, like Colorado and California. I would imagine it's not that high. I mean, I'm not sure. I don't have any data to back that up, but I've never heard of rampant CBD demand or Delta 8 demand in Denver, you know. So
You're right.
I think the real approach here, which, you know, Nebraska only did half of it, is to actually create a functioning regulated market so that there is safe access points for people that want to consume THC or other forms of cannabis, and not just eradicate one access option and then push everything back into the illicit market, especially when they're in a state that's surrounded by legal states, right? Minnesota is not too far north. Illinois is around there. Missouri is around there. Colorado borders Nebraska. So they're not really solving the problem in Nebraska. They're, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think they're exacerbating it. It's an access issue. So, you're right. Do you remember when both of us were still in Colorado at the time, when Nebraska put up those signs that said it's legal in Colorado, like right at the border?
Mm-hmm.
And we're just there.
And they used to profile all the drivers coming in.
Well, no, they didn't even profile it. They profiled the vehicles, because anyone that had Colorado plates, they're pulling you over.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, your choices were Nebraska or Kansas, and I promise you, you're bottom puckered with either way you took, you know? So I think that it's an access issue, and I think, you know, I would still like to see these things kind of pulled. I don't think that you should buy any medical devices or anything you're going to put in your body other than like food and beverage from a gas station, right? So like those little contacts y'all be wearing, don't buy those. Those are unsafe as well. Like, but I think that you have to give people a safe
Spanish fly should not be bought at the gas station?
Huh?
The only medicine you should buy.
Spanish fly should be prescribed by my doctor who knows nothing about lies or Spanish.
Get your Viagra
I guess
I was going to say the only medicine you should buy is
packs and blue chews, but like I think just generally there are a lot of things like you need to provide safe access to good quality medicinal cannabis for people and give them the option to once again take their care into their own hands. And I think until you do, you're going to push money into the hands of people who are going to sell you something that's not so great.
Fair enough. And I think
so. I shouldn't buy my blue chews off of Instagram. What are you saying?
Rico, I want you to get your blue chews wherever, for Jasmine's sake, I want you to get them wherever the fuck you need to get them, big dog. You can call Hims, whatever you got to do.
Speaking of chews and whatnot, we got a big old super chat from the C Word who says, I am curious how much Wagyu one can buy for $1.99. Well, I'll tell you what, it's probably about like one little baby bite, but it's, you know what I'm saying, it's enough.
I thought you got it for the Lolo.
I do get it for the Lolo, but he was asking on average. He wasn't asking how much I get it for. It was not specific to me. It was saying how much can one buy Wagyu for, Rico. But nonetheless, we're going to go to commercial. We got to be right back.
The Control Tower from Highly Educated has perfected the dab. Utilizing the concept of thin film evaporation, you can waste none of it and taste all of it. The micro texture of the SE pillar increases nucleation at elevated temperatures. And with the tower propelling at 2,600 RPMs, it's certainly the most efficient dab experience to date. The Control Tower from Highly Educated.
All right, stop whatever you're doing. Make sure that you hit that like button. I know we'll appreciate it, you'll appreciate it, and YouTube will appreciate it. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. And all of the articles that we cover on today's show, you can read directly on our website at www.high9news.com. And just want to make one quick note. If you guys are noticing anything different with the stream today, it is because we finally got our direct fiber line installed today. So our internet is back up to where it needs to be. And I want to send a big thank you to everyone over at Spectrum for all their hard work. They did put a whole bunch of rush orders in so that way we could be up and running sooner than the average with all these different construction things and whatnot to have this all installed. And so I just want to give a big special thank you to Natalie, Michael, and Philip over there at Spectrum Enterprise. We appreciate you guys a lot. Thank you.
And to Adam and Millie for putting up with what they had to go through when our internet wasn't so hot.
Fair enough.
I'm Jason Beck, and this is Smoky Vanilla. And if you want to feel as good as I look, then you need to get a stretch and smoke with Smoky Vanilla.
Hi, I'm Smoky Vanilla. I have my bachelor's degree in kinesiology, and I'm a sports massage therapist and stretch coach. I focus mostly on individuals that are in sport with chronic pain or injury. I love to intuitively create and customize a session based on the individual that I'm working with. We'll go over a few postural assessments, work together to create a wellness journey based on the health history, past injuries, or anything still affecting you today. And we'll get you back on your feet right away with less pain.
We're about to stretch, and then we're gonna smoke, because we're gonna get on our stretch and smoke. If you want to feel as good as I look, then you need to come on down and get a stretch and smoke with none other than Smoky Vanilla.
And we're back, Rico.
Our next correspondent has been in the game for over 10 years and still on his grind. Current project being a pro athlete focused lifestyle brand with the same damn name, coming straight out of the great purple state of Texas, my man, Sohum Shah.
Thank you, Rico. And yeah, today we are going to talk about cannabis in Texas and one of the many blue spots in Texas, all the large cities as they are. We're talking about a local ordinance in Dallas to decriminalize marijuana. Officials in Dallas, Texas have certified that advocates collected enough signatures to qualify a marijuana decriminalization for the local ballot in November. The city secretary affirmed on Friday that the advocacy organization Ground Game Texas submitted nearly 50,000 valid petitions for the cannabis reform measure. This comes about a month after activists turned in the signatures. If voters ultimately approve the initiative, possession of up to 4 ounces of marijuana would be decriminalized in Dallas, which is the 3rd largest city in Texas by population. The overwhelming support of the ballot petition by Dallas voters is evidence that listening to the community and organizing around issues that matter to them is key to building voter enthusiasm and turnout, Katina Vollinger, executive director of Ground Game Texas, said in a press release. She continued, "This would not have been possible without the dedication and expertise of our field staff, who were able to not only collect tens of thousands of signatures, but also ensure that those signatures were accurate and verifiable. We look forward to winning in November and continuing to build our movement." Some members of the city council had expressed interest in streamlining the process by acting legislatively, but plans to introduce the proposal at a hearing last month did not materialize, leaving the matter to voters. The council will still need to formally place the initiative on the ballot now that the signatures have been verified. That's expected to happen on August 14th. Legally, council has no discretion on these matters. We must vote to add the amendments to the charter package that voters in November will vote on, Councilman Chad West, a Democrat, said in an email newsletter. It will be up to the voters to determine whether or not to support the initiatives. The measure would prevent police from making arrests or issuing citations for Class A or B misdemeanor cannabis possession offenses unless it's a part of a higher priority felony investigation for narcotics or violent crime. Further, it says, quote, "Dallas police shall not consider the odor of marijuana or hemp to constitute probable cause for any search or seizure," end quote. The city manager and chief of police would be required to prepare quarterly reports on the implementation of the policy change with information about any marijuana possession arrests or citations that would be submitted to the Dallas City Council. Meanwhile, earlier this month, activists in Bastrop, Texas, right up the road from me, turned in what they believe to be enough signatures to put another marijuana decriminalization initiative on the local November ballot. Voters in multiple other Texas cities have enacted local decriminalization policies, but the movement has had ups and downs. For example, in a win for advocates, a Texas district court judge last month dismissed a lawsuit from the Republican State Attorney General Ken Paxton, who sought to overturn a local voter-approved marijuana decriminalization initiative here in Austin. That means the cannabis reform measure approved by voters in 2022 remains effective, pending any potential appeal from Paxton to a higher court. Paxton's office filed lawsuits against the cities of Austin, San Marcos, Killeen, Elgin, and Denton over their decriminalization policies that voter passed. Elgin is about 10 minutes up the road from me. San Marcos and Killeen, or San Marcos is down near San Antonio. And if I recall correctly, I believe the judge threw out the lawsuit against San Marcos either yesterday or Monday as well. Meanwhile, activists in Lockhart recently turned in what they say are more than enough signatures to qualify a cannabis decrim initiative for this local ballot this November. In a setback from advocates, however, voters in Lubbock rejected a separate cannabis reform initiative last month. Governor Greg Abbott, a Republican, has separately lashed out against the municipal cannabis reform efforts. He said local communities such as towns, cities, and counties, they don't have the authority to override state law, the governor said in May. If they want to see a different law pass, they need to work with their legislatures. Let's legislate to work to make sure that the state as a state will pass some of the law. He said it would also lead to chaos and create an unworkable system for voters in individual cities to be picking and choosing the laws they want to abide by under state statute. Abbott has previously said that he doesn't believe that people should be in jail over marijuana possession, although he mistakenly suggested at the time that Texas had already enacted a decriminalization policy to that end. Paxton, the state attorney general, used more inflammatory rhetoric when his office announced in January that it was suing 5 cities over local laws decriminalizing marijuana that voters approved, vowing to overrule the quote-unquote anarchy of pro-crime extremists who advocated for the reform. In general, the measures that have already been enacted in Austin, Denton, Elgin, Harker Heights, Killeen, and San Marcos prevent police from making arrests or issuing citations for Class A or B misdemeanor cannabis possession offenses unless it's a part of a high-priority felony investigation for narcotics or violent crime. Shortly after voters in Harker Heights approved their measure, the city council overturned the ordinance over concerns that it conflicted with state law, but activists collected signatures for another initiative and successfully repealed the repeal last year, though officials have still refused to move forward with implementing the will of the voters. In November, Ground Game released a report that looked at the impact of marijuana reform laws. It found that measures will keep hundreds of people out of jail even as they have led to blowback from law enforcement in some cities. The initiatives have also driven voter turnout by being on the ballot, the report said. Another cannabis decrim measure that went before voters in San Antonio last May was overwhelmingly defeated, but that proposal also included unrelated provisions to prevent enforcement of abortion restrictions. So we have some more possible decrim down the pipeline here this year for Texas. And I want to give a shout out to Kyle Yeager at Marijuana Moment. Thank you, Kyle, for covering that story. But let's kick it back to the team. I want to hear what everyone has to say. This is exciting for me personally, being a resident of Texas. It's interesting to see and good to see that some of the other big cities are taking Austin's lead and decriminalizing possession. I know from my few interactions with Austin police, usually at soccer matches or elsewhere at events, that they very much do not want to be enforcing marijuana prohibition at a large scale, unless again it's related to some other felony investigation that they're working on. So it'll be interesting to see what the turnout on this is, how it impacts voter turnout and other down ballot initiatives in the Dallas area. But yeah, let's hear what the rest of the team has to say. This is Sohum with High at 9 News.
I mean, I feel like this is good news, but I feel like Lieutenant Governor is going to ultimately just do the same things that he has done in the past and nullify the people's will.
Yeah, but I mean, go ahead, Rico.
I was going to say, I think the whole continued prohibition in Texas goes against their entire mantra as a state.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
It does.
Will Austin secede from Texas?
No.
Hell no.
That would be funny.
Like
the rest
Pretoria.
of Texas got bigger and better guns.
I don't think that's true, Rico.
Austin's
This reminds me of what we were going through before 215 in California became an initiative. Because if you remember Dan Lundgren, he was an asshole about marijuana.
He was.
Did some really crazy shit, and Oakland, San Francisco, they just were not hip to going out enforcing these laws.
Mm-hmm.
Like Terrence Hallinan, who was the DA in Frisco, said, "I'm not going to do it. I'm going after violent criminals. We don't care if people You know, if Dennis Perron's selling weed out of his apartment, who gives a shit? They're sick people. Leave them alone.
Well, you know what, Dale, and because Dan Lundgren called an emergency meeting of all chiefs, law enforcement at the time that 215 passed, and had a whole meeting with them as far as how to make this law not exist. And Terrence Hallinan, who was the district attorney of San Francisco at the time, he was the only member of the law enforcement community that was totally against all of these actions, and that's where they decided that they would use transporting as the way to make this law not exist, because Prop 215 did not include the transportation of cannabis.
Well, until Pebble's Trippett case came up, they decided, well, it makes no sense to be able to have marijuana, but you can't take it anywhere with you. So we got a handle on that. But what we've seen is that even with now psychedelics, local jurisdictions are going, you know what, I don't want to enforce this. The state wants to come in and do it, fine. The DEA wants to, fine. But no agency at the state or federal level is equipped to go handle somebody that's growing weed in their backyard. You need local law enforcement to be able to come in. If they don't want to do it, momentum now, Sohum, is going to move towards requiring a statewide initiative if the central government won't get off their ass and do this. That's what we ultimately came to in California, and they decided to make it medical because at that time it's probably easier to get passed. But today would be, let's just make this lawful for everybody.
I mean, I think that's the way to go, of course. I do think it's interesting that they, in Governor Abbott's quote in this article, that he's pushing for legislative change when it's his own dipshit lieutenant governor that refuses to bring initiatives that have the momentum to pass in the state legislature. He refuses to bring them to the floor for a vote. So for me, it's a lot of just, yapping from his point of view, because it's his administration that's effectively blocking any real state level legislative change at this time.
Politicians don't do that.
But that political dynamics, why we have the initiative process in the United States. Back in the early part of the 20th century, back during the Teddy Roosevelt administration and the Taft administration, people were just sick and tired of these state governments not doing shit, so they allowed initiatives to be brought forth. They had to be a single issue, but most states now have initiative processes. If the government can't get its head out of its ass, we're going to bring it to the people, let the voters vote on it. And we've seen it. California broke that. Colorado did too. And I hope Texas will get their head out of their ass.
I actually don't believe that Texas does have a state level petition process for citizen-backed initiatives. It can be done at a local level, but I'm not 100% on that. So if anybody knows better, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But the last I checked, I don't believe Texas is like New York in that sense, where I don't believe that citizens are allowed to put initiatives on a state ballot. Which is very dumb and unfortunate, because it would easily pass.
Fair enough. I think we're going to keep this thing rolling. We're going to roll right into our final commercial, and we're going to be right back.
I just ordered the summertime strawberry salad when added steak on top here at Anna's. Make sure you do the same thing too next time you're in downtown Long Beach. Come on down and check out Anna's joint on the 400 block of Pine Street. They have amazing selection of beers, foods, and when you come down here to Anna's, you can even challenge me to a game of shuffleboard if you want to lose. Did you get that? So, next time you're in downtown Long Beach on Pine Avenue, make sure you stop by Anna's Joint on the 400 block. Not only do they have Anna's Joint, this restaurant and bar, but they also have the amazing deli next door, and then next door to that they have a very exotic flower shop. You may want to stop by and say hi.
That song's a bop, man.
Man, that place looks bum. That looks bomb. I used to live like 3 blocks from there. I'm bummed it wasn't open when I was down there.
It's very good. The meatballs are fire. They're very good. They also have a really nice wedding ball soup, Italian wedding soup. It's very good. And Jason's gonna get beat in shuffleboard again there.
Never lost. Undefeated.
Up next, it's the sometimes sensible Southern black female conservative voice that is 100% not a DEI hire, because she's not a liberal. But she is the lady boss behind Kind Cannabis Consulting and Justice Serve 501c3. And up with the next story of the day, Jenny Beth Dills.
This is a long one, but it's kind of, I guess, we're going to breeze over some stuff, so you guys might want to go and read the whole thing because I probably am not going to. But we found something that Chris Christie won't eat, Jason Beck.
Oh, boy.
Because New Jersey.
It's not a Krispy Kreme, is it?
His own words.
New Jersey's about to take away your favorite THC seltzer, Delta 8 weed, under a new hemp bill. Oh, boy.
Sounds interesting to me.
Doesn't it?
Jason's never going back to New Jersey now that he can't get that
2
Delta 8
years after
juice.
the first legal weed sales took place in New Jersey, a different cannabis market, but not too different, is at the center of yet another piece of complex legislation sitting on the governor's desk because he's not eating it. It's cheap, it gets you high, it's available almost everywhere, and it's even more legal and unregulated than cannabis, at least for now. In late June, the state Senate and Assembly voted overwhelmingly to pass a bill establishing regulations for intoxicating hemp products that would prohibit their sale to anyone under 21 and allow municipalities to place a 2% tax on their sale within their borders. If Governor Murphy signs the bill into law, the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission, the state authority that regulates the cannabis market, would be charged with drawing up rules and regulations, including labeling, testing, and safety standards. But until those rules are created, it's a loophole. All those hemp products would be pulled off the shelves, which is interesting. Somebody's actually going to close a loophole while they figure shit out. That's kind of unprecedented. The bill sits at the vortex between the cannabis, hemp, and liquor industries, each of whom want a piece of what's become a booming market. Follow the money, Rico. As a result, what began as legislation designed to get untested products off shelves and prevent their sale to minors gradually became a discussion over how to divvy up the spoils. Caught in the middle are small business owners on the verge of a major disruption. We're good actors. We followed all the federal and state regulations and processes. You still called yourself actors. That's crazy, said Philip Patricia, CEO of Bellray Beverage, a THC seltzer manufacturer based in Ashbury Park and co-founder of the Source Farmhouse Brewery in Colts Neck. We were weeks away from production and they pulled the whole rug out from under us. Aww. What's the difference between cannabis and hemp anyway? Cannabis is what you probably think of when you think of smoking weed. It's illegal on the federal level, though 24 states, including New Jersey, now allow any adult over 21 to purchase it at regulated and licensed dispensaries. Another 15 states have medical marijuana programs. Hemp comes from the same cannabis plant, but in a weird legislative twist, it was legalized on the federal level as part of the Agricultural Improvement Act of 2018, known colloquially as the Farm Bill. That's because there was no delineation during the Marijuana Tax Act. So this attacked that and addressed those issues. Under federal law, any cannabis byproduct that contains less than 0.3% Delta 9 THC is not considered illegal marijuana. It's hemp. The New Jersey hemp bill's total THC standard is more stringent and includes various types of THC cannabinoids. In the 6 years since the Farm Bill, hemp became a huge business, starting with CBD, a non-intoxicating cannabinoid in the cannabis plant. Not only can you find CBD products at specialty shops, but you can also purchase them online or in gas stations next to the Blue Chews. Because hemp is legal on the federal level, customers and businesses can ship and transport products across state lines, unlike federally illegal cannabis. Even if you're traveling across the border between two states with active legal weed markets like New Jersey and New York, it's still a felony to bring legally purchased cannabis with you. What does any of this have to do with hemp products that get you high? There are a lot of cannabinoids in cannabis. Even the non-intoxicating cannabinoids can be synthetically rendered as intoxicating substance. THCA, we're looking at you, buddy. The most common example of this is Delta 8, though it's far from the only one. What's important is this: it's entirely legal to sell an intoxicating cannabis product with less than 0.3% THC without any of regulations that come with the traditional cannabis products sold at licensed dispensaries. All right, you guys, we know that there's no age requirement. We know that store owners are dealing with whatever. We know that they really went on and got way too granular with the story. But I think the most important thing is they're closing a loophole before it totally got off the ground, which is crazy. That's usually not what we see. We usually see people rush and say, hey, let's get as much as we can before they shut this down. Let's get, rush the process. And now that we're seeing that the argument is really about money, because we know that none of this is about the children or safety or protecting our communities and our neighborhoods and churches. We know it's about money and how do I get more of it than you, and how do I get my portion. So I would love to see what you guys think about this. And if you'd like to read the rest of the story, you're welcome to do that on high9news.com.
Man, oh man, I can't. I mean, I'm not surprised, but look, he's attacking the beverages, you guys. Attacking the beverages because
You must be invested in flour.
Oh man, Chris Crispy, man.
Is that intentional?
Yeah, that was intentional. Yeah, I've always called him Chris Krispy Kreme.
I think it would have been a lot funnier if it was accidental, but I might have to jump on that train.
I'm telling you, hey, I poke fun where there's fun to poke. You know what I mean?
So I'm getting a little giggly.
Mm-hmm. See, that's my bipartisanness right there. So
that THCA flower is kicking in.
Mm-hmm. I bet.
Oh boy.
I bet. Probably some Delta 8. I mean,
definitely no Delta 8. Bro. You will not find Delta 8 in my house.
It sounds like this guy he's taking a page out of Nebraska a little bit. This is kind of a popular theme today.
Well, maybe they're talking to each other, huh?
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. Look at this. Look at that bipartisanness.
I mean, Rico,
when the industry gets up and starts making money, they don't want competition. We saw that here in Southern California when they were, the industry was ratting out people who were not in the legal market because they wanted to protect their own cash flow. Oh, you're right. It's the money, follow the money, who's making it, who's not. And I don't know what they're going to have seltzers made out of Delta 9, natural Delta 9, but maybe they can add that to the shelves in New Jersey. Pick up the market.
They have to have some THCA seltzers.
That'll be real great.
That'll be interesting,
I think that's
right?
Like basically a regular seltzer.
Well, no, I think they'll only make like hot chocolate because you'll have to heat it up in order to activate it.
Ooh, that's actually a good idea.
I know.
What if you take it to the beach and instead of like Coors cans where the mountains turn blue when it's ready to drink, it turns a different color when it heats up and it's ready
leave
to
it out and leave it out in the heat for a little bit and it activates for you.
Yeah.
It turns orange and Donald Trump rubs it on his face.
Yeah, it matches Rico's hat.
I'm curious, Jason, why do you want so badly for Rico's hat to be orange? I don't understand.
He's mad it's not a MAGA hat.
If you look at
it, only be one red hat.
If you look at it, it looks orange.
It doesn't look orange.
It absolutely does not look orange.
Hat.
Well, you guys have bad color on your screen or something. I don't know what to tell you.
Absolutely
Maybe you guys are colorblind. I don't know what to tell you.
Orange today.
Yeah, Jenny Beth is looking at the same screen you're looking at, Jason.
Literally.
Jenny Beth must be colorblind too. I don't know what to tell you.
It's not actually as prevalent in women as it is in men.
The whole world is colorblind, not Jason.
I mean,
damn it.
That's how it is. That's how it is. I don't know what to tell you.
We're all the problem.
I don't make the rules.
All right. Well, you know what? New Jersey does, and they're saying stop it with the seltzer.
They're saying stop it. Stop it with the beverages.
I'm still a fan of THC beverages only because I want to see college students doing keg stands with THC beverages and playing beer pong.
They just fall off the keg mid-stand.
Oh, that would be
how
great.
chill these parties can get.
Oh boy.
And Millie says that the new fiber is making the colors come through crisper, so that's why your hat looks so orange. Also, Rico.
Hey Millie,
why are you lying on Millie?
That's how I read it.
Millie, I don't want to take it to a racial place, but maybe this is because Dale, is my hat red or orange? Dale, do you see red or orange? Red?
It's red.
So race has nothing to do with it, Jason.
I was gonna say Dale is a fellow brown or black man too. Then
Dale
yeah.
What do you mean? Dale is a senior citizen with glasses on, so maybe I don't know.
You're being ageist.
Colorist. Stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it. Stop it. Stop it.
You guys, Jason's hit a trifecta this episode.
Nothing has to do with his bad perception of color in himself, right? It's all us, right?
I have amazing. Yeah, that's why would it be?
Because Jason is not.
Pendejo. Come on, man.
Hold on, Millie. It popped something up. No, it's perfect. It popped something up on the thing. Yeah. There we go. I'm gonna roll into this.
Bring us on with this last one.
Yeah. I'm gonna roll into this last one. We got to hit play on this though, because a robber, you guys, and this is a quick one, okay? Because a robber tried twice to shoot a Northeastern Bend marijuana dispensary worker. But the gun malfunctioned, you guys, police say. Co-workers caught him, and a gunman robbing a Northeast Bend marijuana dispensary on Tuesday afternoon struck an employee in the face and tried to fire 2 shots at her, but the handgun malfunctioned, police said. He managed to walk out of the door with a bag of marijuana before other workers grabbed him and put him in a headlock until officers arrived. Police responded around 4:40 p.m. to Top Shelf Medicine at the 800 block of Northeast Greenwood Avenue after an employee called 911 to report she'd been struck in the face and threatened with a handgun before the robber took a bag of marijuana and walked out of the door. Bend Police Communications Manager Sheila Miller said the suspect attempted to fire 2 shots at the employee, but the handgun malfunctioned, Miller said. Other employees put the suspect into a headlock and held him until officers arrived less than a minute later, and Miller said 2 workers were injured while they restrained the man. Officers used a WRAP, W-R-A-P device to restrain the suspect, who was taken first to the nearby Bend Police Headquarters, then into St. Charles Bend. Once released from the hospital, Miller said that he will be booked into the Dutchess County Jail on charges of attempted murder, first-degree robbery, unlawful use of a weapon, second-degree assault, 2 counts of fourth-degree assault, harassment, 3 counts of menacing, interference with a 911 call, and felon in possession of a firearm. News Channel 21's policy is not to name arrested individuals until and unless formal charges are filed, you guys. Well. Shout out to these employees over here at this shop. It sounds like they got some great employees over there that are willing to put their life on the line against this guy. And I don't understand why people would do this, just run into a store just to grab a bag of weed or whatnot. But nonetheless, I can't explain a lot of things nowadays. But what do y'all think about this?
This whole story is just so crazy all around. Everything about it. Like, this dude tried to execute her on camera over what, like a pound of weed? That's crazy.
Well, it doesn't mention a weight. It does not mention a weight. So it just.
Well, I'm speculating about a weight. It's a bag, Oregon, so I'm assuming it's a turkey bag.
And well, it could have been, because Oregon does do deli style, so it could have been more than an eighth or more than an ounce or whatnot. So
I'm gonna give him a benefit of a doubt and say it was a turkey bag and not he tried to shoot somebody over like 2 grams.
You know why I love this story? I love this story because it proves that guns don't shoot people, people shoot people. Mm-hmm. So I love this fucking story because the gun said not today, Satan.
How does it prove that?
Right.
I like this one. And also,
if the gun said not today, aren't you proving that it is the gun and not the person?
No, because the gun malfunctioned.
That's what you just said.
The guy was trying. The gun didn't do it. The gun did not autonomously.
The gun stopped him. You're claiming that the gun autonomously stopped him.
The gun stopped him.
Guns don't kill people. Guns save people.
Maybe it was because he turned his head at the right time.
Gun saved lives.
Didn't work.
Oh, God. I mean, like, I think this is insane. And, like, honestly, when we had to do raid trainings and things like that for our staff, like, I always told them, I'm like, listen, we had a big-ass cart in the back in Colorado. I'm like, if somebody robs this store, I don't pay you enough to, like, protect this weed. Put it on the cart, roll it to the car for them, wave at them, have a nice day. You know what I mean? Like, give them whatever it is. Like, you can't replace people, you can replace weed. So, like, I think it's really shitty that people have to go to work and worry about guns being put in their face because the federal government has created something that has made a plant so fucking valuable that people get shot for it.
You know what? One thing I do wonder, because it didn't specify in the article. One thing I do wonder is if one of those employees was an actual security guard of this place, or if it was just 2 employees of the place and the security guard is just standing around observing and reporting.
You ever been like, today's the day, and you get the chance for today to be the day? Because today could be the day for me. I'm going to lose my shit today.
I mean, it's in Oregon. They might just not have a security guard at that store. Like, I don't think that they might not be required to in Oregon, and the price of weed is so low there, they might just opt in Bend to not have a security guard. Because I imagine if there was a security guard that he would be armed with something, a taser, a mace,
I don't know. I mean, in West Hollywood, we're not allowed to have armed security guards, so it could be something in their municipality that doesn't allow security guards to have guns too.
Yeah, it's possible, but yeah, I don't know. If anything, I also think it's crazy. But after his weapon misfired, he still tried to grab something and run out of the store, like, or as the article said, walk out of the store. Like, bro, your weapon doesn't work. They know that you ain't armed anymore. Like, you got to just get out of there.
Yeah,
then they threw a large can of ass whip on him. Which I like to see.
Deservedly.
I think we're all tired of these little shits coming in and just committing crime right and left, and then thinking I'm going to walk out and no one's going to do something about it. It's
when they said
people the incentive to want to kick your ass if you try that.
Yep.
They say anything else about
if I was in that store and it didn't fire, I knew you couldn't shoot somebody, I'd help them beat the fuck out of you right inside there.
100%. And Dale Schafer is a big fucking guy, you guys.
Yes.
Like a real big fella. He's a big
old,
fella.
but I could still smack somebody in the kisser.
I was gonna say, though, the injuries sustained by the 2 other employees from restraining him, I hope those injuries were only things related to their fists and their elbows from hitting.
It would be work
Maybe they
injuries,
broke a big toe, you know what I mean? Because it's Oregon. They were wearing like Tevas or something, kicking this guy.
Oh boy.
Birkenstocks with socks.
Oh man.
I think
they're just barefoot.
Is officially,
they're just barefoot, stomping on the toe jam.
The white people dreadlock capital of the world.
That's Portland, or outside of a few cities in Oregon. Oregon is a very conservative place.
Oh yeah,
yes, a rural place.
Yeah. Shout out.
Unless you're in Portland.
Isn't that where the Bundy standoff was?
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say the whole Eamon Bundy thing was in Oregon. I think not too far from Bend, right?
Yeah, like Oregon was one of the few states, I think until recently, had not officially abolished slavery.
I think they were the last state to do so.
Yeah.
Woof. Bud's his girlfriend. All right.
Well, on that note, Rico, I think it's time to go.
On that note, shout out to it always comes back to a bunch of conservative shit. So, goddamn, Jason.
Comes back to the truth.
Just joking. But thank you all for tuning in for yet another episode of High at 9 News. You can catch us live weekdays, 9 a.m. Pacific, high noon on the East Coast. Big shout out to our super fans getting their comments posted on the big screen. We had a couple today, right, Jason?
Yes, the shout out to the C word on that Wagyu special.
The C word always.
Shout out to the C word on a lot of fucking
exactly.
things.
Shout out.
I'm taking pictures.
Yeah, big shout out to the C word. We gotta get the C word on the show. Show your face, C word.
Well, I mean, it's a band. They perform. You should check them out sometime.
I like it. I can dig it. Yeah, but also our live audience members and online supporters tuning in each day, giving us feedback on the daily headlines of chaos we also call the developing cannabis industry. Our Reddit correspondent team tuning in from all over, bringing us much needed variety of perspective and your respected opinions to the table. Production team, Millie and Adam behind the scenes, keeping the AV struggles in check. And now that we are loaded up with fiber, got to take a bathroom break. Finally, Cannabis Sativa L. You are the sacred reason why we show up to read these stories every single day. Thank you, too. It has been, what is today? Wednesday? Yeah. Hump day, man. We ain't talking about no humping jokes today. But it is Wednesday, July 24th, 2024. Show's over. You've all been blessed with the top industry headlines. Hope it's enough for you to put in your pipe and smoke at least until tomorrow. My name is Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street for High at 9 News, America's #1 daily cannabis news show. We're gonna put this one right back out to the blue dot in the middle of red Texas. My man Sohum Shah, you got for us?
All right. Well, I guess I encourage everyone to enjoy your Wednesday, smoke something, have a seltzer for Jason because that's his favorite method of consuming.
Unless you're in New Jersey or Nebraska, right?
Yeah, you're gonna have to cross those 2 off your list. I guess you can't visit there anymore. But no,
shotgun a seltzer, a cannabis seltzer. Let's find out.
I might be interested in doing that just for fun, a low dose. But yeah, enjoy your Wednesday. Maybe if you're not working or when you're done working, you can celebrate National Tequila Day, followed by celebrating Hump Day. Have a good day, everyone.
I see what you did there, Sohum.